Hi, Jackie with Bead Embroidered. Today's video is going to be a tutorial on how to make a simple bead embroidered cuff bracelet. This is what we're going to make today, so let's get started. The first thing you need to do is to get your measurements. There are 3 ways to determine the length of your cuff. The easiest way is just to take one of your bracelets or cuffs and measure them out. Make sure that you include the clasp as part of the length. Another way to measure is to take a piece of string and put it around your wrist. But I wouldn't want to wear this too tight, so I'm going to loosen it up, and when I get the length that I want, then I measure it out. The third way to measure is to use a paper tape measure around your wrist. You need to take into consideration the length of your clasp. The clasp I'm going to use is a 3/4 inch magnetic clasp. Since I determined I like my cuff size to be 7 inches when completed, I'll make my beading 6 1/4 inches. The next decision that you need to make is what shape is your cuff going to be. For beginners, I recommend using the rectangular one. You can either use it as a rectangle with a straight edge, or in my case, I like to have a curve. But there are some other shapes that you can do as you go along. So we've determined the shape and the length, but now we have to determine the width. In this, I used a 1.5 inch width, which is very comfortable for me, but it's up to you how you want to do that. Once we have all the measurements, then we're ready to go by creating a pattern. I made this pattern out of watercolor paper, but you can also use cardboard or cardstock. You can use this pattern for future projects. The next decision you need to make is what kind of foundation you're going to use. Here's a couple of examples. This is felt, and it has a little bit of a pattern to it, makes it a really interesting design. This is denim. On this one, you can't see the backing on this, but this is done on the interfacing, the medium weight interfacing that I talked about in a previous video. In these last two, we're looking at ribbon. This is a satin ribbon, makes it look a little fancier. This is a grosgrain ribbon that has just a little bit of a pattern to it, and they all make wonderful fabric foundations. The next decision you need to make is what backing material you're going to use. Here's a couple of examples. On this one, I used grosgrain ribbon on the front, and I used felt on the back. This was started with a felt, and I used the exact same felt on the back. With this one, I had beaded on the interfacing, and on the back, I used ultra suede. All of these are very, very comfortable to wear. I made my pattern and I traced it onto my fabric foundation, which in this case is faux leather. It's thinner than regular leather and easy to bead on. I also traced and cut out the backing, which is felt. I'm now ready to design. I chose 3 glass cabochons to use as my focal beads. I glue my cabochons using E6000 glue onto my fabric backing. Make sure you don't use too much glue so that it seeps over the edge. That makes it harder to embroider around. We'll have to wait 30 minutes until the glue dries, and then we can start beading around them. While I was waiting, I created a sketch to use as a guide. However, I tend to do a bit of redesigning as I embroider. You may be more comfortable as a beginner to stay with your original design. You need to determine your color palette so you can select your beads. In the beginning, I recommend using only 2 or 3 colors that you think will look good together. For this cuff, I'm using black and white. I chose 2 beads to begin. I have a size 11/0 white bead that has a pearly finish. I also like these 8/0 beads that are black and white. I think they'll be perfect for my design. The glue is dry and I'm ready to bead. Using the 3-bead back stitch I demonstrated in my stitch video, I'm going to start following the round shape using my black and white beads. I have my size 12 needle with my single thread and knotted at the end. And I'm going to come up through the back and pull my thread through. And now I'm going to pick up my 3 beads. 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to start beading around this first cabochon. I go through once, I come back up, and then I bead through again to make it the back stitch. I'll pick up 3 more beads, I go back down, I'm going to come up at the beginning of my last 3 beads and go through them to finish the back stitch. And here's a closer look at my first 6 beads. So I've stitched around each of these one time with the black and white beads, but before I finish, I like to go through the row just one more time to anchor it down. So I'm just going to take this and I'm going to go around the whole circle one more time. Until I'm all the way around, and then I just go down to the back and tie a knot. I'm ready to do my second row, and this time I'm going to do white beads. So I'm coming up from the bottom to the top, and again we're doing with the smaller beads 3 at a time. And just follow the line along. Let's do 3 more beads just to demonstrate what it's going to look like. Come up between the first group of 3 beads and the second group of 3 beads. Go through one more time, and I've done 2 back stitches around, and I will continue to do that around the entire cabochon. I've circled the cabochons with 1 row of black and white beads and then a second row of just white beads, and I did all 3 cabochons that way. Following my design, I sketched out on my leather that I was going to put some extra lines of beads in. When I put the white beads in right here at the end, I thought it looked a little sparse, so I added another row of the black and white beads, and I'll do the same at the other end. When I looked at the lines in the middle, I decided I needed to keep my beads small. So I've added that I'm going to use black 11 O's and keep using the white 11 O's and just alternate them. So this is how I do it. I'm going to start with the 3 beads, but instead of doing 3 of one color, I'm doing an alternating one. And I'm going to stitch down my back stitch this way, and this time I'll start with a black bead because I'm still alternating black and white. And there you have it. The face of my cuff is completed. And I pretty much followed my design with the 3 cabochons and the stitching. I'm very pleased with it. So I'm ready to put the backing on. I'm going to turn this over. Here's the backing ready to go. And I'm using my E6000 glue, and I'm going to get the glue ready. I don't want to go to the edges. I just want to do the middle. And then I put my backing on like this, and I'm going to let it dry, and then I'm ready to edge. If you're not familiar with the edging stitch, I refer you back to my video on bead embroidery stitches. So here I go. I'm going to use just the blacks for the edging because I don't want the piece to look too busy. And I come up, and I go through, and I'll do a few more. I come up right next to the other one, and through the bead, and I will continue to do that all around. So I've done a few just to show you how it should look. I'm going to add one more, and I want to remind you that you're going to go through the backing as well as the foundation fabric. You pull it, and then you just go through the bead. And this is what it should look like. I've finished edging, and here's what the cuff looks like complete with the clasp sewn on. If you're interested in a kit for this cuff, look on my Etsy store called Bead Embroidered. The kits include the fabric foundation, the backing, and usually some of the beads. Thanks for watching this cuff tutorial. My next video will be a tutorial on bead embroidered painting.